Good morning, everybody. If it's 11:30 in Tucson, Arizona, guess what? Don Zavis Sales Consulting weekly class is on. And once again this week, I'm flying a little solo because Don's taking care of some personal business. We want to welcome all of our Facebook friends. We want to welcome all of our YouTube folks. We want to welcome all of our people that are coming in through Zoom. And welcome to the people that have joined us here. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. If anybody's that has been seeing us over the years, you used to know that, or you know that we used to do a session on current events and how they affect salespeople. Well, we haven't been doing that in a while, but the world has changed so much in the last few weeks that we're going to go back and do that. We're going to reincarnate that particular segment. But first I want to do some little housekeeping chores, and I want to remind everybody, and if you can see the screen right here, we have a speed networking event this coming Tuesday at the Arizona Sands Club at 10 a.m., and that's a 1-hour, very structured event where it's different than normal networking. It's where you sit one-on-one with a person and you've got a timed limit, usually around 4 or 5 minutes, so you kind of share that. You share that kind of a situation. And then when that is done, you pick up and go to another person. So we've got this little orchestrated event coming up, and it's a situation where you can actually walk out with 8, 10, or 12 business cards, and not just cards that you've met in the hallway or passing. You've actually had some very structured conversations with them to bring your situation up to them, so you can tell 8 or 10 different people why I lost my signal. So this is it. This coming Tuesday. It's rare when you've got, because we also do the fourth Wednesday that I will bring up here right now. So please bear with me as I go through this particular first time using this particular monitor as opposed to an easel or just talking off my computer. But we're going to just try this digital approach a little bit differently. So the very next day next week on Wednesday is going to be our fourth Wednesday networking event at the Arizona Sands Club. And that, as you can see, starts at 9 a.m. instead of the 10 a.m. that the speed networking starts at the previous day. So basically the Sands Club is the Arizona Sands Business Networking Group meets every second and fourth Wednesday at the Sands Club. And so the spotlight for this particular event is going to be the Better Business Bureau serving Southern Arizona. And they're going to give us an update of all the things that they've been doing and all of the things that their members care about, what they do. They do a lot of research and a lot of verification on scams for businesses, scams for seniors, just all kinds of stuff. They've got a very solid program. You're going to learn a little bit more than that. And so that's next week's Tuesday, and that's next week's Wednesday. But next week, 1 week from today, is going to be another class right here, just like it is every Friday at 11:30. But this is going to be a special kickoff summer series that we're going to have a focus on it. So it's going to be some new material from both Don and myself. It's going to be more of an event type of promotion for us. So we hope that a lot of people will come and be here with us and make it very interactive, because when we have discussions as opposed to presentations, everybody gets a lot more out of that. Everybody in attendance and on the live feeds, they get more out of it. We certainly do, because we have mentors and we have tactics and techniques that aren't perfect. And so we're always trying to learn more as instructors, as educational resources, and as salespeople, because that's what we do. We sales train and we business coach. And so hopefully we'll be able to get this event type of thing going on here. So one of the things I'm going to do today is we're going to go back to the current events, and this could take a few minutes because there's been a lot happening in the last couple of weeks in our world. Mortgage rates, as you can see, have surged to 5.78, and this was as of yesterday morning, and it could be even higher than that now. It's the highest level since 2008, and we've been living in a world where there's been a housing shortage. We've been living in a world where there's been no inventory of any type of purchasable property, whether it be a single-family home, whether it be a condo or a townhome or anything along those lines. I know a lot of realtors in this town, and their big problem was looking for listings, because once they had a listing, it was off the market in usually less than 24 hours, going back over a year. And that's how low the inventory has been post-pandemic, and even a little bit through the pandemic. But the interest rates were low, and you could get in a house at 2.5%, 3%, things along those lines. So people were overpaying. People were actually, if you put a house on the market at $250,000, there's a good chance that you lost that house to somebody willing to pay $300 or $350. And so the question now becomes, is that going to change? And I think it probably will. To what degree, we don't know. For instance, I was talking with a realtor yesterday morning at breakfast. He is a residential realtor. He put a condo on the market last week. And as of Thursday morning, it was still on the market. That hasn't happened to him he can't remember the last time that happened. It's probably close to a couple of years ago. So the higher interest rates at 578 is chasing certain types of fringe buyers, fringe borrowers off the market, and we don't know to what degree that's going to be, but it's also one of those things whereby it's an instant change. Boom, the rates go up from 3.5 to almost 6, and today they might actually be at 6. Don't know, I haven't seen any pricing today, but all of a sudden, now what's the deal? Now for the first time in a couple of years, there's been a condo on the market for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, whatever the exact calculus is. I didn't pick that up. But he had a stern warning. He just said, things are going to be changing. We don't know to what degree, but things are going to be changing soon. That's going to affect everybody that is looking for homes. That's going to affect everybody that wants to move from one home to another. That's going to affect an awful lot of people responsible for selling all the things related to a home purchase. You know, it's going to affect real estate agents. It's going to affect appraisers. It's going to affect home inspectors. It's going to affect all the people that support the home, like roofers and landscapers and you know, that type of stuff. Now, there is still an awful lot of homes in the pipeline being built, because there has been a push. That's a little slower because of the labor supply, and the price of goods, which we'll talk about in a minute, has slowed that down too, because now it costs significantly more money to buy a home. I've got a client who's building a home right now, and they've been taking their time. They've had to take their time because of the labor market. So whenever they can get some people to stick on a deadline, but the problem now is that home project is now 1.5 years old, and now everything is so far more expensive than their budget. They had this kind of a construction loan for this amount of money at this amount of rate, and now that, their budget has been blown from a materials only standpoint, by $40,000-$50,000 in that range. And that's stinging. And now when they go to convert into, from a construction loan to a mortgage, this is going to sting even more because they were probably planning on like a 3.5 rate transfer to the bridge loan. But it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt all of us, frankly. And so, it's going to take people's payments if they were thinking of maybe a $1,500 payment, for example. It's going to take most of the time. It's going to take it up over $2,000. So anyway, is anybody starting to feel any effects of mortgage rates or rental at this stage? If not, you will. Next up is inflation. Now this is, okay. Basically the Fed is starting to raise rates, trying to beat inflation. We are expected to be up to 6.6% one year from now. That's on an annualized base. If you read the news at all, we've had a couple of months at 8+%, 8.5 and 8.6. It was expected to go down and just relax a little bit this last month, but it did not. It continued to rise. So those 8% are calculations from this month over the same month last year. When you line it all up and aggregate it over a 12-month period, that's what they're saying is the 6.6% increase. Now, salespeople are very, very exposed to this right now. Main reason is gas and food, and to a lesser extent auto repairs, because parts are being stolen and catalytic converters are being heisted off of cars and things along those lines. And salespeople typically rely on their cars way more than the average individual. So basically, gas is in California is up into the 7s already. Here in Tucson, we are at 5 or just under 5, depending on. There are certain discounters that are like $4.73 this morning, $4.76. But if you're just going to a normal retail station, you're going to pay $5 or so close to it. It won't feel like anything different than $5 or maybe a little more. And so there's very few states in the union now where gas is still in the mid to low 4s. That's almost gone. And so, and I know that for a fact because, I used to fill up my tank for $40, and last week it was $68. And I'm sitting there going, wow, if I fill my tank up twice a month, which is typically what I use in my car, then I'm paying an extra $50, $60 just for gas. Doesn't have to do anything with maintenance or tires or anything like that. All those parts, all those accessories, if you will, are going through the roof as well. So in the gas world, Sam, you've hit, you see that. Melissa, you catching it? I mean, have you filled your tank up lately and got sticker shock? Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it just really is. So that's really affecting our world, which is one of the things that we wanted to pay attention to. So now let's go to layoffs. We're starting to see a lot of migration in the labor force now. I talked with about 4 or 5 different people yesterday that they said, like, hiring. One's a small manufacturer that has about 50 people or 60 people. He told me he's actually getting a higher response rate now to his ads than he has in the last year. So people are coming in, they're filling out the application, they're starting. He says he still has a turnover problem because they're not staying very long, but the more people that he gets in, the more he can evaluate a better situation to keep these people. And so what's happening is people are starting to lose their jobs for whatever reason. And companies are getting really, really caught up in making sure that expenses don't stay high if sales start to decrease. And so Coinbase is in the crypto business, and crypto is the basic crypto industry has just fallen like a free falling safe, and there's going to be thousands and thousands of people in that world going to lose their jobs. And just like we don't know exactly what it's going to happen, because we've got all these goods coming in from overseas, and we've got a lot of American companies trying to scramble to reduce our dependency on that foreign labor, on those foreign manufactured goods. So it's really one of those things whereby we haven't seen the true effect of what we have in front of us now. A lot of people say we're in the middle of a recession already. A lot of people are saying it's just starting, but by the end of the year we'll be full bore into it. Obviously, the White House is saying there is no recession, and probably never going to be one. So we've got all these contradiction information pieces there. So it's really difficult to understand who's saying what and why. And so a lot of people will just take the most conservative path and just start reducing expenses in their businesses now. If there's some excess personnel, start drifting away from them, making sure that a lot of people, unfortunately, their first reaction is to start cutting like promotional budgets and marketing materials and things along those lines, things that actually promote business in a downturn. But it's just somebody looking at their P&L saying, okay, expenses, we've got to really watch them. Another way to look at inflation is, and I've been doing a lot of research on what the true effect is, and this is about the most reasonable amount. This high inflation is going to cost all of us, on average, $460 a month. I've read a lot of articles in the last couple of weeks that have been saying it's a $5,000 annual problem for a household. And so when I saw this statistics that the prediction is $460 a month, that's kind of on par with so many others, or the bulk of others. But $5,000 a year, that's after tax. That's not above your tax deductions. That's below your tax deductions. That's coming straight out of your household budgets, mainly in food and gasoline, like we talked about. Maybe some sort of other things like other materials and stuff. But that's going to hurt. Now, we may not have seen the effect of all of that yet, but I'm just telling you, $460 a month to an average person is a lot of money. And it's going to have some other reactions, and so some of those reactions is people are going to be ratcheting it up on their spending. And in all of this, it's interesting. Elon Musk has been in the news for a variety of reasons lately, a lot. He just announced, I think it was yesterday, or it could have been Wednesday, that the world wants us, for climate change reasons, to convert to electrical vehicles. The Tesla is kind of like one of the top of the lines in that space. You cannot buy a new Tesla for $75,000, I don't think. You can maybe find one that's 7-8 years old for still $35,000, $40,000. Whether or not it's depending on how much it's been used and how much battery life is still in there, because if you have to replace your electric car batteries, that's a big number. That's not an oil change, pal. That's not new tires. That's more like $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 ticket to replace the batteries in any electric vehicle, much less a Tesla. But he's going to basically he put up his price tag by $6,000. So if you've got a $70,000 vehicle, you know, because of all of the new stuff going on in terms of lack of some semiconductor chips and all that componentry increases, you know, that's going to be almost a 10% rise to anybody that wants to buy a new Tesla. And it's interesting that, you know, people want us to stop using fuel and to convert to fossil fuel and convert to electricity, but that means dumping your $15,000 vehicle or your $20,000 vehicle and going into a Tesla that on the used market is 35 or 40, on the new market is 60. That's unrealistic as well. So we've really got, and most people don't really connect the dots that when you're charging an electric vehicle, you use electricity, right? Where does electricity come from? It comes from fossil fuels. So we're really not getting there like we should, and at least in the time frame that everybody wants. New survey just came out that said over half Americans are dipping in their savings already. That's part of the $460 a month we just talked about. They're already dipping in their savings or going into debt to help cover expenses. Now, what this is also going to do is going to increase people's borrowing against their retirement. And that's really unfortunate, because you can borrow out of your 401k, for example, or your ROI, IRA, but it's expensive to do that. You know, it's very structured. You have to have approval to do it. You have to give it back, or if you don't give it back at some point in time, every program is different. But if you don't repay that program, then all of a sudden you're going to owe more taxes on that. You're going to owe taxes on that income, if you will, and the IRS is going to penalize you probably ding you another 10% for violating your retirement package agreement. So it's really kind of cumbersome as the way it's going to happen, and it's going to really and last but not least, small business optimism has dropped to a record low. And it's one thing when you have major CEOs that make millions and millions of dollars a year issuing that warning or issuing warnings that they've been issuing. But when small business, when you've got a solopreneur or an entrepreneur or somebody that is more in the under 100 employee category, and you now as the head of that business are seeing all this stuff going around, you know, with inflation and supply chain and labor shortages and all that kind of stuff. Once those types of individuals, which are by far, from a number standpoint, the largest game in the country when it comes to business. Small business is responsible for so much more of the percentage labor force, that when you get into that attitude problem of owners of small business, and I'm in a lot of small business networking events. I attend them, I sponsor them, and I can see the, you know, there's no more nodding of the heads, it's shaking of the heads. The problems are just definitely very, very real, and it doesn't really matter what industry these people are in. If they're manufacturers or if they're service people like plumbers or electricians, or if they are commercial or residential, it doesn't matter. Everybody's starting to see this shift, and it's a current event that we have to keep our eye on. We're not into the prediction business, but we are into the training and coaching business. So we have to make sure that all of our clients and all of the people that we deal with on a regular basis in the world of selling, the reason that we do these nice, cheery little presentations is to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. So any questions on the current events type of thing? You guys good? Okay. So now on to as they say in the movie business, the feature presentation. We're going to talk about social media marketing a little bit today. Not necessarily on how to get on your phone and click this and do that. That's not what we do as educators. We talk more about social media strategy, business strategies, social strategies, and things along those lines. Now, the 4 things we're going to cover today and is going to be more of a checklist for the coming year, the remainder of the year. Planning a social media strategy, creating a content calendar for your business or for your activities, starting social media advertising, which is basically paying some of your social media platforms for their services, and tracking the social media analytics. So we're going to start by number 1, plan a social media strategy. What is a social media strategy? Well, we're going to digress here for a second. A social media strategy fundamentally is no different than any other, structurally, is no different than any other strategy, starting with a business's strategic plan, starting with you may have a marketing plan as a subset. We're talking today about a social media plan. There's all kinds of other plans as well. There's a capital plan inside of a business, how we're going to get more money over the future. There's labor planning for sure, HR planning on how we're going to make sure that we've got the resources to do our business. A social media plan is really no different. It has a little different language to it because of the technology changes. But as you can see in this situation, or in this model that we use for all strategies, on the right-hand side are the bubbles that are more long-term, and on the left-hand side down below are your short-term tactical bubbles. So we always start at the top. When you're doing any kind of social strategy or any kind of business strategy or any kind of financial strategy, you always start with your vision. Where do you sit in the community? What are you trying to do? What is the impetus of, wow, I'm going to start this, I'm going to do this, and it's the same way when you're doing a full business strategy as it is when you're doing a subsector of that strategy in your social media strategy. Then you're going to have mission and values. Values is going to be values is the architecture by which you'll make all your decisions. Your decisions will be made based upon your values and the concerns that how you want behaviors in your company or in your activities to go. Mission is related to the vision, but the vision is the overall thing that doesn't change very much. The mission is how you do it. How are you going to implement things so that your vision comes to fruition? Now, when we get more into shorter stuff, we get into goals, strategies, and tactics. Goals, we're going to talk about goals, social goals here in a second, social media goals here in a second. So you're going to have goals, and below your goals, you're going to have physical strategies that you're going to put in place, and then every strategy is going to have tactics underneath it. So the tactics are kind of like where the rubber meets the road. It's the things that we are going to actually do day in and day out to make sure that our handful of strategies get into play, and that turns into basically accomplishing our goals. And just for your information, that's our first exercise, as to what you're trying to get done, what you're trying to, how we're going to do it, what are the multi-year goals, what are we going to sit down and strategize, and then we're going to put in place things that have to be doing. So we'll talk about the 3 or 4 major challenges, and then we'll put 3 strategies underneath each challenge, and we'll put 3 tactics underneath each strategy, and we'll just start moving. Going back to our social media hierarchy, the words are gonna be a little bit different, but basically the concepts are. A good social media strategy will give us the goals that we want to accomplish. So we're going to talk about SMART goals here in a minute, but because SMART goals, even though a lot of people are not sold on SMART goals, I am. I believe that they're it's a very easy way to establish very valid goals, and we'll get to those goals here in a minute. You've got to have a good strategy. Has to be measurable, has to have your key performance indicators or key performance metrics, and also you have to understand exactly where do you want your social media focus, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute, and the different types of content. Content has been changing a lot lately because all the platforms are now so related to short form video, whereas a lot of the platforms back in the day didn't really have easy access to video, or it was just a YouTube thing or something along those lines. Now everybody's got access to short form video, and so not only do we have to figure out what kind of content is in our videos, but we got to make sure that they're played on the platforms that align themselves with our target market that we'll get a little bit more in a second. So one of the first things that you need to do is you need to conduct a social media audit of yourself. What have you been doing lately in social media? What has been working or what has not been working? And so we've got to really figure that out first as to what is the current state, because we cannot build a future state in a vacuum. We cannot build a future state until we understand the current state, the things that have worked for us, the things that have not worked for us, and then we need to identify if we need future resources. Like, for example, are you as a solopreneur, for example, going to learn this yourself because the major resources required don't really exist, or they're not to the level that you want, so you're going to end up doing a lot of stuff yourself? Or do you have the resources to farm this out to some sort of marketing agency or social media agency, things along those lines? So you're going to need to come along with that, and then once you understand your resources and you've got to figure out what are your competitors doing. Hey, if you're in the insurance business, what are your competitors? If you're in the food business, what are they doing? What do their logos look like? What do their postings look like? Are they videos? Are they articles? Are they free samples? What are they doing, and are they successful at it? Because that's going to really help us frame what you need to accomplish and the resources that you're going to need to provide that. So you're going to start by pulling social media analytics and get the analytics on your audience. The analytics on your audience is going to be key because, and we'll talk about this a little more in the next couple of minutes, but it goes back to one of the fundamentals of all business, of all marketing, is your target audience. Who are you trying to sell to? and through what vehicles. In this particular sense, we call that content and audience analytics. And so when we do that, we're going to make sure that we have really appropriate access to analytics so we can assess performance. The thing about social media, one of the significant benefits of social media marketing is the data behind it. In the traditional media, television, radio, newsprint, magazines, you always made an investment that was that was an interpretation or a forecast. It never really did have a lot of data behind it. Radio, for example, there's an awful lot of radio commercials on the radio. And a lot of people believe radio's become fairly inexpensive relative to, it's kind of like cable TV. But most people don't realize that radio has become a 55 to 60-year-old and over medium, okay? You know, we did a survey yesterday. We had about 40 people in a room, and we had probably a 78 or an 80-year-old at one end of the spectrum in terms of age, and we had like a 25-year-old. Nobody, you know, 40 and under has ever turned on the radio on a casual basis. So if you have, I mean, they do streaming, they do podcasting, they do all kinds of input-driven stuff, just not radio. So if you are trying to target a teenager or somebody, even a millennial or a Gen Z or all the little alphabetic references we have for demographics, you're not going to reach those people on the radio, or if you do, the percentage is going to be so small that you won't see a difference. However, the only data you have to prove that is the data that you can take a look at how many sales did you make after that radio campaign was gone. And that radio campaign, they will want to sign you up for 3 months, 6 months, a whole year, you know? And so you won't know if it was effective until way down the line. Social media, with its instantaneous data and analytics, can tell us very inexpensively if our programs are working, if our postings are working, if our videos are working. And we can look at these analytics very quickly and very succinctly, and we can make changes in midstream. We can make changes after a week. We can make changes after 2 weeks or a month. We can make the changes that can be made inexpensively, so you don't blow a lot of money waiting on things to happen that are not going to happen. So that's one of the reasons why a social media marketing strategy is just so important, because it's inexpensive relative to the traditional mediums, and we have the data in real time that we can make adjustments if we so have to. So we're going to next step, when we do our audit, we're going to list all of your social media accounts. And some people have a lot of social media. There are a lot of platforms out there. Most of the platforms that are out there are pretty darn small and don't have great brand stuff, but they've got a specific target market. They've got a specific niche that their audience hails to. So we'd list all your social accounts and note to what degree they're active. We hear it all the time. I'm on social media. Okay, good. When was the last time you posted? About 2 years ago, but I read it all the time. You know, I get notifications from Facebook a couple times a week. I read what my Aunt Jenny's doing, and I know what my cousin is in the Midwest is doing. And so many people really believe that they are socially active in that space when they're really not. So we want to make a determination on how active you are. And also we want to go to your pages as part of the social media audit, and we want to make sure that your branding and all of your types of postings are somewhat aligned in their content. You know, we don't want to create internal contradictions within our marketing plan or within our social media plan. So we want to take a look at, are your logos the same? You know, I remember a company that I used to work for. Every flyer that they had a different logo. I mean, it was a similar logo, but it was either in some sort of housing, graphic housing, or if it was a different color than the colors of our company, whatever that may be. And so it was just one of those things where there's no alignment, there's no congruence from platform to platform. Now sometimes, because the platforms, they do cater to different audiences, sometimes certain types of tweaking to the imagery and the graphic design is going to be important and beneficial. But generally speaking, we want to assess that as part of the social audit as to what's going on each of the different accounts, or each of, you know, if you have a website, or if you have an Instagram account or a Snapchat account or whatever, Facebook, LinkedIn too. So we're going to make sure that your presence there's a common thread. We want to make sure that there's a common thread present in all of your various accounts. And like I said before, you want to review all of the stuff from your competitors, because you're in an industry and you're going to be, you know, you'll see these competitors, you know, at industry trade shows, for example, or at chamber conferences or other networking events. One thing that comes to mind is, you know, the printing business, for example. The printing business, I mean, there are a lot of printers around here, around anywhere. You've got the Alpha Graphics, and you've got certain smaller private ones. I know a bunch of them at the Sands Club, for example, here in Tucson. So you want to make sure that we look to all of those different people to find out what they are doing, what appears to be working, what appears to be not working, and we want to craft our plan around some of those audit findings. Any questions up to this stage, or is it just all 60,000 feet?
I'm trying to think of something to add.
Okay, no problem. So we're going to talk about clarifying your media goals. See you next week. So we're going to talk about SMART goals right now, and we've talked about SMART goals in this environment here many times in a variety of different ways. So basically, SMART goals is an acronym for every letter in the word SMART has a link to it. SMART goals are, the S is for specific. What does that mean? Goals cannot be unclear. They have to be very specific. Goals, there's no such thing as a goal that says, well, there's no value in a goal that says something like, well, my goal this year is going to increase sales, or my goal this year is going to reduce expenses, or my goal is going to, you know, align my employment resources to my needs. Those are just, you know, those are just full of gel. They're just fuzzy. There's no there there. But a goal, an example for the sales is, you know, we're going to increase our sales by 10% this year. That's a specific goal. Or we're going to reduce our headcount turnover by 30% this year. Those are specific goals. That's what specific means. A goal must be measurable. In addition to being specific, it's easier to think through it than say it. It's got to be measurable. You got to be able to hold somebody, including yourself in more cases than not, accountable. So you've got to give them a goal that is not only specific, but it's something that can be measured, like sales can be measured, or turnover can be measured, or if you've got a capital rise that you need, it can be measured. So that's it's really important for SMART goals to be measurable. And SMART goals have to be achievable. You know, there's a couple of different types of goals. We call one a BHAG goal, big, hairy, audacious goal. That's not in the SMART goal category. That's in the stretch category. That's something that we're not going to really deal with at this particular session, or even in any kind of real way with our client base, because we're going to stick to achievable goals. We want people to not get discouraged by having a goal that is absolutely so out there and so unimaginable as to how you get there. You have no vision or no mission that would achieve that. So we want goals to be specific and measurable, and we want them to be achievable. Secondly, they got to be relevant. I can think many times when I was given a goal by a supervisor that was specific, measurable, and achievable. But given the strategic plan of the business, it made no sense to why spend the resources and effort to accomplish that goal when there are plenty other relevant goals that need to be accomplished. And a lot of that stuff happens in family companies where, you know, your resources are bled off to help family members, for example, or people have certain favorite projects in the community that the resources are bled off, and they may be good on their own or good in a philanthropic mindset, but it takes away from the organization. So goals need to be specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant. And finally, they all have to be time-bound. Every goal needs a deadline, whether it's next week, it's next month, it's by year end, or it's by the end of the quarter, whatever it is, every goal needs to be time-bound, and really that's part of the accountability conversation, you know, because if you can't get the goal done in a certain time frame and you're not going to hold people accountable to that date, then that goal will not be accomplished. And so in our social media strategy, we do have to have with every strategy the appropriate set of SMART goals that will define how we set up that strategy and the business plan to support it. So.
This is all part of your coaching and so forth that you do with the client?
It is, not the execution part, because the execution part is the client. So think of a basketball court. You know, the coach does the coaching and the training and maybe recommends some play calling, but at the end of the day, or at the end of the timeout, the players have to pick up that ball, take it to the court, and make that basket. Okay, so we help everybody with the planning and give them tips on execution strategies, but clients have to do their own execution. Okay, so after you've kind of gone through your goal setting, you've got to revisit your buyer persona. And what is a buyer persona? It's really kind of a big nebulous word for understanding your target audience, the fundamentals of your target audience, where they're at in terms of their age, their income, do they own a home, do they rent, do they use public transportation or have their own car, do they have 2 cars, do they have 3 cars, you know, what's the approximate net worth? Because if you're trying to sell or develop a social media for something that costs a lot of money, well, guess what? You know, you're going to want to focus on those upper end, higher lifestyle individuals, and you've got to know that. And you've got to make sure you understand your audience, and you've got to understand your buying persona. So you got to. What that does is that will just maximize the value of your detailed tactical plans, because what that'll tell you that maybe you're on the wrong platforms for what you're trying to do. So maybe you're on some sort of very inexpensive type of road, like maybe a Snapchat or a TikTok, you know, when actually you need to be into where that demographic you know, plays in their sandbox more often, like maybe a Facebook or maybe a LinkedIn. And so that's part of everything that you got to do to be to reestablish your buyer persona. Like a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs already do have their buyer persona, but you always got to do the exercise a couple times a year through the analysis of your metrics. That are you still on target with your buyer persona? Because your buyer persona will change over time. They will get older. They will become more mobile or less mobile. They will have certain attributes and characteristics that might change on you. And if you're not paying attention on a regular visitation to your persona structure, you may be wasting your time. And you also need to know your media platforms. That is really, really critical. Once you set your goals and once you understand your target markets, now you have to create alignment with your platforms. And so, and every platform, there's a lot of overlap in certain platforms, but notwithstanding the overlap, every platform has its own distinction, whether it's an age group that they appeal to, whether it's a certain income or a certain activity level that they appeal to. It just depends. Facebook, for example, is the largest, 2.9 billion users. So there's an awful lot of business people out there. Facebook has gone up. When I'm talking about a buying persona, Facebook used to be where the kids were 10, 15 years ago. Excuse me, not any longer. That demographic has shifted. Now Facebook is for, like, you know, midlife adults and higher. And that's about all that you see on Facebook these days. You don't see a lot of kids on Facebook. They just bought Instagram a couple of years ago. Instagram's got 1.5 billion users, and there is a lot of overlap between the two. Instagram is short form video almost exclusively. But if you add up these two, all under the common parent of Meta, you know, that's 4.4 billion users, and you can do some of your postings onto Facebook into Instagram on the video platform, and vice versa. There's not 100% alignment in the two, but you can really. But a social media guy that I know, he recommends not using that platform sharing tools in the two. He said, post separately. Post your Facebook separately from your Instagram, and your Instagram separately from your. Don't allow the platform to kind of merge those postings. And I really, what he said makes a whole lot of sense in that. Now, moving on to the couple of other platforms, we've got LinkedIn, right? That's your business platform. So if you're trying to sell to other businesses, or you're trying to market professional services to businesses, or maybe employment services, LinkedIn is really the platform for that. TikTok, on the other hand, 1 billion users, is great for reaching millennials and Gen Z. You know, and again, short form video is what's driving that, and it's going to continue to do that. So, in fact, we just did I just recommended for a client that they do a series of 10 videos, release 1 video per week for the next 10 weeks. And so I think we're probably into that 5 weeks now or 6 weeks now. So when we get the 10 done, we'll be able to see the lead generation, how many clicks they've gotten, how many likes, how many comments, all the metrics that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
John, what's Gen Z?
Gen Z, there's so many of them. I think it's about 24 to 35 age range. Generations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you've got baby boomers, and then then a little further down are the millennials, and then the Gen Zs, and then the Gen Xs, and the Gen Ms, and there's just all kinds of gens in there. All you got to do is Google them, and the whole age bracket will pop right up. You know.
My daughter told me that she's in her late 20s. One day she came to me and told me, Dad, I'm a millennial. I can't even say it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that?
And how old is she?
She's in her late 20s. I think she's 28, 25.
Okay. Yeah, that would be the low end of a millennial, I do believe, or the high end of a Z. But anyway, those are just terms of how the social media world describes the various decades of age graduation. Twitter's interesting. It's not as big as you think it is. It gets a lot of press, and where it has action is in groups. It's a big follow. You follow these politicians, these athletes, these musicians, and if you want to get their attention, you just join into their group chat and say something a little controversial or off the wall, and man, your Twitter account will blow up like crazy because people will just start jamming you with all kinds of nasty stuff. And so Twitter is very useful in certain segments of the population, certain industries, things along those lines. So, but anyway, so those are some of the, and there's also Snapchat and YouTube. Snapchat's 557 million. They've had their problems. They've had their successes and their problems, and they've had to restructure on how they do business once or twice. But they're actually fairly strong these days. And YouTube is 2.5 billion users, and so that thing is just off the wall huge. And again, they were pretty much the pioneer of video, but they don't limit themselves to just short form video. You can put longer videos on YouTube, just like we put this session on a YouTube. It's usually a 60-minute session, 90-minute session, doesn't really matter. Short form is really, really good and popular, and you do see an awful lot of 5-minute how-to videos on YouTube, how to hang drywall, how to paint a car, or things like that. So YouTube is very informational to all kinds of individuals, and so it's very interesting. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the calendar. because there's so many accounts, so many platforms, there's usually multiple target markets because your products may go across all kinds of different demographics or uses. The calendar is really, really important because if you don't have a social media calendar, you're going to get lost. You're just absolutely going to get lost. You're going to lose track of your content, all the things that you've created. You're going to lose tracks of whether or not you've posted or not. Are you posting on time? So a calendar, a content calendar is just basically an organized, glorified spreadsheet that is calendar-based. I use an Outlook calendar, and you can create an Outlook calendar, a separate Outlook calendar than the calendar that's on your computer that tracks your meetings and other commitments. But you can create a separate calendar that's just for your social media. And it's just there to remind you when to post and what to post. Because in a perfect world, you're going to have multiple types of content. You're going to have content that is more appropriate for Facebook, for example, or you're going to have content that's more appropriate to LinkedIn. You're going to have some content that will overlap. And if you don't keep track of all of those things, especially if you are on platforms, like 6 or 8 platforms, because you just want brand awareness, for example. And so you're just shooting your name and what you do out everywhere. If you don't structure your content and when you make it available, when you post it, is what I mean, then what's going to happen is you'll get lost. And that will turn your data into mush and make it unusable because you won't really be able to track what you've been doing, and the data, the metrics that come out of the systems from the various platforms, you won't be able to see necessarily what posting created that data, those data points. So, and in organizations, or in, say, if you're a small company and you've got a social media agency, you'd also want to create a shared calendar. A shared calendar is just something that not everybody can alter, but everybody can view. Whether or not it's your social media person, or it's your CFO, or if it's your PR agency, or if it's just you. You want to do it in a mechanism that's a shared calendar, and so multiple people could actually see that, and just make sure that everybody sees what you're doing, sees what you're posting, when you're posting, the types of things, whether or not you're posting an article versus a short video, or you're posting a long video, and it's an organizing tool so you don't get lost in your own social media strategy, essentially. So how do you create one? Well, first of all, you need to collaborate with colleagues, because you're going to have a business strategy, and the business strategy is going to be supported by a bunch of other strategies, include your marketing strategy. Your social media strategy will be contributing to the success of your overall marketing strategy. So there's usually going to be multiple players involved. If you're in a company, you're going to have various departments that you want to access, that you want to do. You may want to talk to people that are industry professionals in the industry that your company, the industry that your company belongs to. You also, if you're a smaller company, you may want to collaborate with other people. You may not have a board of you may not have a physical board that that you report to or that a president or CEO reports to. But maybe if you're just a small outfit, you have an advisory board. You have, your CPA, you have your attorney, you have your various vendors, like your various strategic vendors, like your printing vendor or whatever it is, and you trust them, and you think that so they can be part of an advisory board. You would want to talk to those to the advisory board because they're probably in their own businesses or have been. They've probably had a lot of experience in social media, or they know somebody who can help with your content and your postings. So the first thing that you want to do is to make sure that all of your initiatives are in line with your SMART goals. If your initiatives do not accomplish any of the SMART goals, then it shouldn't be an initiative that you should take into consideration. So you want to first get a list of your initiatives and collaborate with colleagues to make sure that that you're doing. Then you want to understand what you're trying to accomplish with your social media strategy. And a sales funnel is one of the things that has got multiple parts. We do a whole session on creating a sales funnel in digital markets. But for this particular session, you either have a sales function that's either awareness, which is the top of the sales funnel, or it's consideration, which is kind of like the middle of the part of the sales funnel, or it's actually closing or conversion in the middle of the sale, towards the narrow end of the sales funnel. So you want to make sure that you understand what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and where in the sales funnel it is. Then you got to produce content at some point in time. So when you're producing content, you got to decide what your target audience chooses to watch or listen to at every point in time. So a few minutes back, I talked about radio, for example. And radio is turning into, the only people that listen to the radio are people that basically grew up on radio. And so if you're trying to develop content for a 50 or a 60-year-old, that's a different set of content than you're trying to develop for a 25 or a 35-year-old. So you're going to have a good sound content creation process to make sure you're driving content that is relevant to your target and can be aligned. As it says here, 2022, short form video or even long form video on YouTube is driving the content marketplace. It really is. I just mentioned that the client, we did some short videos. We tried to keep them to 30 minutes. She was able to do that. 30 seconds. She was able to do that. But you gotta, that's 10 different weeks. That's 10 different messages. The content creation process has got to be repeated tenfold to make sure that we're going after the exact market that we want to do. And you can repurpose videos too. You can repurpose all types of social content. So for example, you could give a presentation in front of an industry group. You can have that presentation transcribed and put on your website. You can have that presentation snipped into 2-minute creations or 5-minute creations or 10-minute creations. So you can repurpose all of that stuff, and you can also, short form videos can also be repurposed, but you do it a little differently. You do it a little more, not as dramatically. So you might change some logos for various platforms, but that fundamental basic content for the short form video can be kind of just managed in a different way so that those videos, although they're not identical, they're very similar in their messaging. They just appeal to different target markets or to different age demographics, things along those lines. So repurposing videos is easy to do. You can do it with music. You know, if you're going to have a video set to music, then the music that you want to play on a Snapchat or an Instagram or a TikTok is going to be a lot different than the music that you'd want to play to the people that follow you on Facebook or Instagram, for example. Once you get your calendar done in terms of your content, now you've got to figure out when the time is to post. And that's not as complicated as it sounds, because there's a lot of, every platform has got its own metrics on when people click on their platform. So generally speaking, more people read posts, click on posts, like posts midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Less or so on Monday because everybody's trying to get past the weekend. Less or so on Friday, everybody's preparing for the weekend. And less or so on the weekend, and these are metrics that are 2 years old, so these might be kind of changing a little bit, don't know. But there's not a whole lot of responses on the weekend because weekend is full of life duties as opposed to business duties or commercial duties. And so the opening of emails and the opening of, the number of likes and the number of comments and your matter of impressions and reaches and all that kind of stuff, they kind of typically go down on the weekend because people are taking care of their kids or washing the cars or whatever people do on weekends that are not related to commercial enterprise. There are other tools that can help you. Business Suite's one of them. I've never used Business Suite myself, but it gets a lot of good press, so I'd throw it up there. And so if you don't have some sort of shared calendar already in your business or in your suite of tools from Microsoft or whomever, you can also, there are plenty of third-party calendars. I would imagine some of them might be free. I don't know if they would be shareable, but there are ways to get through that. The various platforms support scheduling, so you can actually, once you define your calendar, and you see that you're going to post here on Facebook on Monday, you're going to do this on Tuesday, you're going to do this on Thursday with altering your content and your platform. A lot of platforms will support your scheduling mechanism, so you can actually go into the scheduler on these platforms and input everything, at one sitting, and therefore you can gain some comfort that these postings will be released automatically when that particular platform is set up to do so. So once you get your calendar, then you want to schedule it. Now, so we've just been talking about creating a strategy and how to develop a calendar that supports that strategy. But now we've been talking about like organic, things that you do yourself that is basically no or ridiculously low cost for it to be having any budget consequences. If you want to now expand your strategy into paid advertising, now we start to use the words advertising as opposed to posting, if you will. So that's where a lot of the platforms make their money, because like on Facebook, for example, any posting that you want, whether it's trying to sell something, trying to increase your leads, trying to do whatever you want to do, you have the ability to pay for a boost. You can boost your ad, and you've got to have an open account with them, and it's not very expensive. But if you do a lot of it, it can add up real close. And most of them have some sort of paid advertising mechanism. And so basically you're paying to promote your business. One of the advantages of the metrics when you pay for advertising, the metrics are significantly enhanced. You can learn, you can see immediately when you're paid advertising, because now when you pay to play, then all of a sudden there's a whole new set of analytics that come into it. There's a whole new cost factor that comes into it. So you can measure, once you can measure a total cost, now you can break it down into cost per thousand or cost per click and things along those lines. So advertising is a money-derived resource, no question. Most people probably have some sort of combination of organic and paid advertising. But the paid advertising part can bring a whole lot of value to you a whole lot faster, and it could also tell you where you might be making some sort of data-driven mistakes in your advertising plan on a significantly quicker and more valuable basis. So creating a paid strategy is really not too different than creating any other strategy. You still got your goals, your strategies, and your tactics, and they all have to be aligned. But you got to choose. You got to create your advertising goals, and that might be a little different than your other goals. Again, once you do that, you've got to figure out who do you want to pay. What platform do you want to pay? Facebook, or do you want to pay Instagram, or both, or so you got to figure out first and foremost is what are the most aligned platforms with where you're trying to go. You also want to again build the funnel concept. We're talking here about 3 types of funnels: an awareness, a conversion. An awareness, a consideration, and a conversion. So those are 3 different activities in your sales funnel that calls for 3 different forms of content. So the top of the funnel will be lead generation. You just want to get folks to like you or to click on your post, anything along those lines. That's all you're trying to do if you're in a brand awareness or a lead gen strategy. But if you want people to consider you, that's a little different. So you got to start setting up your target audiences. When you're building a consideration audience, people have probably already engaged about you. They've been in the top of the funnel. Now they're sliding down the funnel, and and when they consider you because they already kind of know you somehow, but not enough to buy from you at this stage. They're just adding to their knowledge that you are providing and adding to their recognition of your brand. And then for conversion audiences, that's the short part of the funnel, and that's basically taking that person that used to be aware, that is now considered, and now they've made the decision that yes, they like what they've been seeing, and they want to close. They want to convert and hit the selling cart or whatever thing that you've got in your platform to actually conclude a purchase. And then once you've got that stuff, the last but not least in doing your formal strategy is to track your advertising analytics. Like I've said multiple times today, tracking your analytics is a huge exercise that needs to be done on a constant basis. None of this that I've been talking about is something that you sit down on a weekend and do. This is a journey. This is a long process that goes on for months and months, analyzing and overanalyzing, tweaking. So you need to make sure that you you have all the media analytics you placed in place, I mean, and track your metrics and your results. That will be how you evaluate your success. And basically, how to track organic KPIs, get an overview of key metrics. You want to be able to identify patterns. You want to see if patterns are increasing, decreasing, if there's spikes in them, where the spikes in the metrics may come from. Maybe it's posting on the first week of the month instead of the third. That doesn't get any action on yours. You know, all this is hypothetical in terms of examples, but tracking the metrics are basically, that's the key, because your advertising strategy and your organic strategy will change over time. They will change. Things will change. The market will change. The industry will change. The products and services will change. And where you see that is going to be in your analytical research. And all these companies like Facebook and stuff, they've got analytics that are accessed, especially if you advertise with them. You'll be able to see all kinds of metrics, whether it's clicks, likes, comments. It doesn't really matter. But in short, it's all about establishing your strategy and your goals, creating the content, understanding your target market, getting to make sure that you understand the platforms that are going to be valuable to you, and then decide whether or not you're going to also advertise and start the whole process over with kind of a new mindset, because now you're paying real money. Now you're going to be paying money to advertise. So it's getting time to wrap up, and I'll just do a quick summary real quick. And thought I was going to do a quick summary. So what we've covered today is planning the media strategy. It's no different than any other strategy that you might do in terms of its approach or how you want to get it documented. You want to create a calendar, make sure other people that you collaborate with understand what you're trying to do, have access to the calendar, can comment freely upon what you're trying to get done. You also want to decide whether or not you want to start advertising on these platforms, because if you do, that's no longer, you've shifted from organic to now real money. And so that takes a whole different aspect, a whole new level of tracking, because if you're spending real money, then it's really important that that money is being put to good use in a very timely manner. So you want to track that as best can be, and then you've got to put in a process of analyzing the analytics, if you will. And so basically, everybody, that's our show for you today. That's what we've been doing. We've been talking about our current events and how our lives are changing, and now we've got a structured approach to helping you create your social media strategy. Again, it's a journey. It's not something you sit down in a couple hours and knock out. It's just something that you've got to increase your learning, increase your perspective, and that's going to be, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So anyway, thanks for joining us, all of our live stream people and our in-house audience. So I'm John Wechter for Don Zavis Sales Consulting. We want to wish you a great weekend. Stay as cool as you can possibly, almost nationwide. The temperatures out there are very unhealthy. We just wish you the best. Good luck and good selling. Bye-bye now.